Hi guys, we're the Jersey Comic Crew, and on today's video we are talking WandaVision. You just finished watching 1 and 2, and I bet you have theories and questions on what's going to happen next. We're going to talk about some of those right after this.
Hey guys, Chris and Rob with the Jersey Comic Crew here. We are talking WandaVision. Theories, speculation, some of the biggest things that we didn't talk about in our reviews and breakdowns and Easter eggs. Guys, if you haven't checked those out, make sure you go check those out before you watch this episode, because we give you everything from episode 1 and 2. And now Rob and I are going to discuss some of the kind of overarching theories, speculation going into episode 3. We know this show is basically a front, right? It's kind of this, it's fun, it's comedy, it's I Love Lucy, and then underneath it's just like man, you know, like it's very death metal-y.
Yeah.
So take it away, Rob. What are we talking about today?
So the one thing I wanted to address right here is why a sitcom, right? So I'm sure we're gonna get this question a lot, and why are we gonna continue to go through the stages of sitcoms? And the reason I think we're doing that is because that's where Wanda feels safe, right? I think Wanda created this place as like a safe haven for the trauma that she's gone through. And the reason she's going 50s, 60s, 70s, and all these other stages of sitcoms is that like things are simple in this time period, right? In sitcoms, the problems aren't as big as you might think, especially when you start earlier on in the 50s and 60s. But what I think the show as a whole is doing, as you're going through 50s, 60s, 70s, and so on, you know, we're going to see more complexity and more of the negative emotions or the darkness, or we're going to see more things go awry for the quote-unquote sitcom. And I think that's one, a direct parallel to the evolution of TV. I think it's like, oh, you know, in the 90s and 80s, as we hit hard-hitting truths about life. Look at French Prince of Bel-Air, like it's comedy, but it tackles some very important social issues. To 2020, where we just pretty much, if it doesn't talk about something important, why are we watching it kind of deal? Yeah. So, and I think as the show progresses, as she starts realizing what's going on, we're going to see, you know, more trouble happening in the real world. And it's going to be direct parallel. So obviously the next episode, episode 3, we're going to get 70s. Things start to get in color. You know, she's going to start dealing with the fact that she has quote unquote children, but I'm sure there's going to be at least a mention that like, hey, maybe I don't have children. This is a fantasy. This is not real. Something's going off here. My biggest concern with this show is the pacing, because I know it's 8 episodes, correct, Chris?
9
sorry.
episodes.
It's a 9-episode show, and the first 2 episodes are, let's call it what they are for me. They're throwaway episodes. Nothing happened in them. You have 7 episodes left to go through some major events. Yeah. And the show is the slowest burn that I've seen in a long time. I mean, I could be completely wrong. Episode 5 could break my mind, right? I mean, Marvel has that capability. But like at the pace that they're going now, you're going for a very slow burn. You don't have a lot of time left to do it. I'm afraid that this whole, we're teasing you with this big surprise, I'm just so afraid it's not going to pay off.
So I'm on the opposite side of that. I think the pacing's fine. It's short. If it was an hour-long episode each, I think the pacing would be off entirely. I like that it's a shorter format, but a couple more episodes instead of like, you know, the 6 to 7 episodes. It's now 9. As far as your first question, right? Like, why the sitcom trope? Why is this what it is? I think it has a deeper meaning to Wanda's development. I think so. For a lot of people, a lot of immigrant people, we got to remember Wanda is an immigrant, right? She's from, you know, a made-up country in Europe, in Sokovia. And for a lot of people from other countries, the way they learn English is through television. The way they learn English as young kids or developmentally is by watching old American TV shows like I Love Lucy, Bewitched. And a lot of the reasons is because those shows aren't circulated to other countries until way later. Like, I think the funniest one was like Miami Vice was popular again in like 2002 because it finally got to like certain parts of Europe. That's funny. And it's like a show from 85. So a lot of people learn these tropes and these kind of perfect like lifestyles and what they think of America is. Sorry about that. But when Wanda was developing, perhaps when she was, you know, had the Struckers, you know, doing things to her to get her powers out, and her and her brother, maybe one of the guards was watching American television and she got solace and she got a little peace by watching those TV shows or listening to those TV shows. And I think that's what's going on, because we have to remember this is a mental scape. This is a mental escape as well.
Mm-hmm.
And there has to be a reason for why she wants this to be this perfect sitcom lifestyle.
I have a question for you. So the sword aspect, right? We know that agents are trying to contact her. We see in the trailer agents are where they were running away from an explosion or something like that. We see Monica Rambeau getting dragged into there, right? And I know we're gonna get probably the other side of that. We're gonna see that. To me, I think that like Wanda is pretty much like somewhere in a field or something, and they pretty much built a facility, or like they set a base around her to try to get into this and see what's going on. And maybe because her power does come from the reality stone, she's creating this alternate reality in that little bubble. And that B-suit gentleman that we saw coming up, maybe that's them. They dug a tunnel underneath to come up to see what's going on. And maybe that's a representative from SWORD to get into this world of what's going on with Wanda, to try to like tackle it, to see what's going on. Let's say her neighbor Agnes, who might be Agatha Harkness, is actually from Hell, the servant of Mephisto. The SWORD representatives don't know that is not a construct of Wanda, and that is not a foreign entity that came in. So they don't know how dangerous the situation could actually be. Maybe there is that third player in there. So it could really get really cool and twisted. But when that comes, it's not going to happen in the next episode, I don't think. I think the next episode is going to be another one like this. We're just going to see more spikes of what's going on. I think it's going to be another slow burn episode.
Well, I think one trope you're into a little bit could be a big thing, and that depends on where she is. I think that's something they could easily take from House of M if they're taking bits and pieces, where she's kind of in this big house by herself and just going nuts and away from the Avengers post Endgame, away from everyone. No one really knows where she is, and who knows, maybe she fell asleep watching TV and was watching I Love Lucy or something.
Oh, that'd be funny.
Or, like, she fell asleep and her powers in her mind, she had a bad dream, maybe reliving visions, death, or whatever the case, and kind of created almost like this dome bubble, like this Truman Show-esque bubble. And SWORD is like, what is happening? It's throwing like Earth off its axis, or it's having some effect on the planet because her power's out of control, and they're trying to get in to help her and also stop it. There may be a kill if we can't stop in time situation, which may amp the show up another like 5 tiers.
Ooh, what if the ticking, we get in the 2 commercials, maybe that links to like readings on how off the whatever science mumbo jumbo we want to insert here, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's
insert
like
comic science.
Exactly, right? Like, oh, there's too much of these alpha waves, beta, whatever waves, right? And it's going to cause a disturbance if we don't tackle this right away. That means doom for us all. That could be an angle.
Could be.
I just think at this point, unfortunately, there's not enough to go on, and I think that's the point of the show, is Absolutely. To kind of keep you guessing until we hit that midpoint, and then you start putting all the pieces together.
With this show, it can be very hard to follow, and I like that. It's very tough to kind of figure it out, and I like it, and I like the challenge. And I think there's going to be a lot of things. There's going to be way more connective tissue in the MCU, Rob. I don't think you have to worry about that as far as the show going forward and kind of connecting the dots with, other things. Remember, we also have to put in our minds and not leave it in the back of our minds that this is technically act 1 of a 3-act play that Marvel's doing, right? So WandaVision is the first step into Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness that Sam Raimi's directing, and we know she's going to be in that, possibly the villain, depending on how the outcome of this happens. And then, as well as the Spider-Man 3 movie, which now has everyone and their mother, and it's probably going to be 5 hours. So this is kind of just the appetizer course of what's going to go on for this character. In
people who are in Chris's boat, who do all the deep dive and Easter egg hunts, and me, because he's going to tell me, right? Like, I think it's going to solidify the direction of the show after this next episode, because it's going to be the official third of the way through the show. I think this is where we're going to be like, okay, this is why this is dangerous, or this is what's going on. I think the audience is going to figure out a good chunk of it. I don't think Wanda will at that point.
Yeah, well, I think she knows a little more than she's letting on. I think she's playing not dumb. She's just in denial, right? Like and denial's a very dangerous thing, and it's extremely dangerous for your life, for the decisions you make, for acceptance, for the relationships. It's an extremely dangerous thing, and denial is something that people don't talk as much as like anxiety or depression with, but denial goes hand in hand with that, and that is something I think this show is going to kind of push into, like we've been talking about, right? Mental health issues is going to be kind of the background underlying score of the show. But when she saw the beekeeper in episode 2, she clearly knew kind of what was going on. That's why she reversed time and was like, nope, not accepting that, going back. You know, one thing we didn't talk about that much was the helicopter from episode 2.
Yeah, that I don't know what that is.
So that was in color, right? You mentioned that anything in color had very big significance and meaning. It was in color. It landed in the rose bush. You know, we kept hearing this banging. Originally, Vision got scared in the dark and thought but it was like a tree branch. We've all been there. And the helicopter itself, I think, is real. But when it came into the scape, they tried to, because it had the sword logo. I think when it flew in with her magic, it automatically got turned into a toy and dropped there.
I didn't even think of that. That's
the real world. It's real. It's a real helicopter.
Exactly.
So I think it's real, and possibly her bubble like expanded to fight off the people trying to come in. And when it hit, it got turned into that, like by her magic and her little whippity dips. The last big question I have, Rob, and I'm gonna ask you this. We've been circling the drain, not us, like everyone has been circling this Mephisto theory. And the thing about the Mephisto theory, it's almost so locked down. Is there a possibility they're just like, you know what? Everyone figured it out. Let's take it out. We'll leave it for Loki. Could it be someone else?
If it's not Mephisto, I think Mephisto is going to end up being the next big bad for the Marvel universe. Maybe not Thanos level, but definitely like somebody they're going to have to take. I think they're going to do like Avengers instead of just throwing Ultron there. Like, they're going to build up this next Avenger-level threat and take on, instead of this universe-level threat. I think they're going to change it. Like, I think it's going to be...
I don't know. I think it's going to be universe-level personally because of Eternals and everything else. And they're doing more Guardians. They're doing more space stuff.
I
think
we'll get Nova. That, like, towards the end of this phase is going to be that final...
Or, like, phase 5.
Level. Yeah, like the phase 5. Like, towards the end, we're going to get that. I think... They're probably going to break it into a 3-act structure. Like, the big villain for the first act is Mephisto. Then it's going to be maybe Kang. And then maybe Galactus. Like, just argument's sake, right? We're not here to talk about that. But if it's not Mephisto in this, then it's no one. And the reason it's no one, if it's not Mephisto, it's all Wanda.
Yeah.
It is Wanda's her worst enemy. She's dealing with this. I think if it's not somebody doing this and hurting her and being this malicious, I think it's going to be a commentary on how your mental state could affect you and those around you. I think it's going to be her dealing with it and Doctor Strange ultimately coming in and being that one to throw her that lifeline to help her get strong enough to get out of this and accept the fact that Vision is dead and not coming back.
Well, here's the other
That's
thing.
What I think. If it's not Mephisto, it's her dealing with that. And then the Multiverse's Madness is dealing with the ramifications of her actions because of her power going crazy.
I mean, I could totally be on board for that as well. And will we get an Aaron Eckhart if you don't die the hero, you live long enough to see yourself become the villain trope? Or, again, something we haven't talked about in this little tidbit will kind of end what you are absolutely saying is a correct theory. The aspect that we see, there's a hint in these trailers of like Wanda staring at what looks like to be a broken mind gem.
Where?
In the trailer.
Oh, in the trailer, okay.
And to me, and it's also in color. It's fully in color. So to me, this is still 70s. I think this next episode is going to be a lot bigger than people think. I think they gave us these kind of like intro episodes to get us used to like, hey, this is extremely different. This is extremely not what you're expecting. And now we're going to press into this gas pedal. But the Mind Stone is more significant to both of them, not just Vision. We know it was in Vision's head that kind of like helped him live. The original Mind Stone was in the scepter that Loki had in Avengers 1. So the Mind Gem, once they broke that casing of the scepter, that was the Mind Stone. That was also used by the Struckers on Wanda and Pietro to help their powers. So she has a direct connection to the Mind Stone as well. Again, all this is in her mind. Could Wanda have found it and tried to maybe either put it back together or manipulate it with her powers of reality to create this scape?
I don't think so, because I think MCU wants to start moving away from the Infinity Stones, because they already touched upon it. I think if we play too much with the Infinity Stones, then you always are going to be questioning that throughout the rest of the MCU history. I think they're trying to phase that out. Like, we did that arc, we touched upon it, now we're moving towards other things. Wanda's strong in her own right. If she's doing what you're saying, it'll be without the Mind Stone. I think they gotta try to disassociate themselves with the stone, because that's the arc that we just went through.
I think it's tough, though.
I don't think so. I think.
Well, here's the other thing. Doctor Strange has one around his neck at all times. You know what I mean? So I don't think they're going to fully go away from it. I don't think they're going to make it the overarching story. I think they will have a little bit of the stones, because there has to be an aftermath for cosmic power. Like this stuff is almost too strong not to touch upon. And again, it adds to the question of, before, she wasn't able to, maybe this is all in her mind, right? But she wasn't able to go forward and back through time.
No.
Like the way she saw the Beekeeper and was like, no, and went back. So that's another question too. Could it be part of the stones that are amplifying her powers in different ways we haven't seen, that's also kind of making her go nuts in House of M style? So all great questions.
Guys, we want to hear your thoughts down in the comments below. What you think is going to happen in the rest of the season for WandaVision, and specifically for episode 3. Do you think it's going to be that big turning point that we discussed here? I'm excited to hear what you say.
And guys, thanks so much for watching us. Give us a thumbs up, really helps the channel out a lot. If you're brand new, subscribe, turn on those notifications. You do not want to miss anything else with WandaVisions. We have another 7 episodes to go. We will be covering all of it for you guys. And as always, I'm Chris Heller. That is Rob Moran. We are the Jersey Comic Crew, and we will see you next time in Westview.